90.3 FM. Welcome on into the Wednesday edition of Helping Seniors of Brevard with Joe Steckler. Joe is off today. Kerry Fink is here along with a great panel of guests. Hi, Kerry. How are you?
I am doing great today, John. How are you doing?
Wonderful. Beautiful day outside. Doesn't get much better.
No, this is why we love Florida. We were sharing stories talking from people around the country this week and how cold, and they're just now coming out of all those cold snaps and all of that. And we just get weather like this. We are so blessed.
Yeah, it's incredible what many portions of the nation have been going through. Absolutely amazing. But we have been spared, and hopefully the weather gods will continue to shine on us when we get into hurricane season as well.
Let's pray for that. Good weather at hurricane season. So, on behalf of our president and founder, Joe Steckler, and I would say our executive director, Rick Broderick, who is here today. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Good morning, or afternoon now. Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're having a great day, and also on behalf of Kim Bernard, who is our education specialist, welcome to Helping Seniors. We have got so many great things to talk about on the radio today. Can't wait to introduce our special guest, one who is a very regular special guest who is here with us every fourth Wednesday. It is Jennifer Helin with Seniors Helping Seniors of Brevard. How are you?
Good afternoon. It's good to be here.
It always is good to be here, and we're going to be talking about a topic today that you're going to want to grab a notepad and a pen and maybe take some notes, because this is far more important than you could possibly imagine. I am so delighted to announce that the attorney is in the house. It is Ruth Rhodes with Rhodes Law Firm. How are you, Ruth?
I'm doing great. Kerry, how are you doing? Thanks for having me, by the way.
No, you are so kind. Ruth is kind enough to volunteer on the Helping Seniors Board of Directors, just like Jennifer does. You guys are so kind to contribute your time and energies to helping everything that Joe and Rick are trying to accomplish with all that we do in the Helping Seniors world. And one of the things that, those of you who have been around Joe any length of time, he always talks about the importance of getting an aging plan together so that whatever we run up on, it may be annoying or even troublesome, but at least we've kind of anticipated the possibility we might have to deal with something like that. And so today our topic is going to be Medicaid planning. And, all I can say is, I know I've heard Kim tell stories. You were relating a story just a few minutes before we went on the air, Jennifer Helin, about calls that you take that are sort of in the same vein. There wasn't the right amount of pre-planning done, so now everything really becomes much more complex than we would hope it would be.
Absolutely. We see it, doing what we do at Seniors Helping Seniors. We're in clients' homes and talking to the seniors and the kids themselves. And we see the need for what Ruth does, on a regular basis. Maybe not daily, but definitely weekly. We see where, that Medicaid planning is important, that having the right documents are important. It can really make a huge difference and bring a lot of peace and reduce anxiety for the family when they're going through that with a senior. So I'm really excited that Ruth is going to share some information with us, and I want everyone to really pay attention because, it's one of those cases where you don't know what you don't know. And I remember about 15, 20 years ago when we were taking care of great-grandma, we had no idea. Mm-hmm. And no idea that Medicare doesn't pay for all of this? We didn't know. So this is something that's really important if you've got aging parents or if you're aging. Really pay attention to what is going to be said today.
Yeah, and if you've heard any of the shows that Joe has done along the way, he's always talking about the fact that, you get into these cases where you might have to deal with a nursing home and you're talking about $8,000 or $10,000 a month and things like that. And that's something that, a normal family, even if everybody's working together, chipping in, trying to make something happen, that's not going to last too long. And, as you've also heard him talk about the fact that it's tougher and tougher to come up with proper long-term care insurance. So I guess, Ruth, this is probably a great place to jump in because we need to get to the whole concept. For most of us, we run up on these situations. We don't know the terminology. If you're not inside of all that, you don't really know even sometimes why would I even need to think about this? So the first question is, I barely understand what Medicaid is. What on earth is Medicaid planning?
Well, in case you didn't know, Medicaid is the source of payment a lot of times for people when it comes to their long-term care. A lot of people don't know that their health insurance is not going to pay for long-term care. Medicare is not going to pay for long-term care. And so most of the time, you're either going to have the money yourself to pay privately, have a long-term care policy to assist with it, or you're going to end up probably having to go on Medicaid. Now, Medicaid has very strict guidelines on how to qualify. Basically, it's for people who are destitute. So what Medicaid planning is a legal process where we use the rules that Medicaid provides to us to legally what's called spend down your assets to help you qualify for Medicaid in such a manner that we're able to preserve your assets to provide assistance for you through your aging process and even possibly leave a little something or a lot of something for your beneficiaries and loved ones. And it's all very legal. Medicaid knows, and we show Medicaid every transaction we've done. Everything is very above board. We just follow the rules that they give us. So Medicaid planning is sitting down with someone, looking at their assets, looking at their income, and determining how do we make you qualified. And then we make a plan for you. And we make sure that you understand what the different options are. And we educate you on everything that we can possibly think of so that you can make the best decisions for your situation or for your loved one's situation. But I don't know if you know this, but Medicaid, in order to qualify for Medicaid, you have to have less than $2,000 in what's called countable assets.
Wow.
Now, the reason I say countable is because some assets are considered exempt and don't count. For example, if you have a homestead, for the most part, your homestead is not going to count. If you own a vehicle, for the most part, your vehicle is not going to count. Certain other assets don't count either, but we go through each asset individually and make sure whether it's a countable asset or an exempt asset. So we carefully scrutinize each asset. And then we figure out a plan. You know, what's the best way to preserve as many of your assets as possible, but still get you qualified. And then also, there's an income limit as well. So for an individual who's going into a nursing home, their income limit is only $2,382 a month. Wow. So if you're over income, that's not the end of the story. We have tools available to us so that we can still qualify you for Medicaid, even if you're over income. Now, we can't qualify you if you're over asset. We have to actually go through the spend down process of the Medicaid planning process to be able to get you qualified through the asset limits. Now, if a husband and wife both have to go into a facility, sometimes that happens. There is a little bit higher income available. It's $4,764, but that's for both of them. And then they have a $3,000 limit in countable assets if they both have to go into a facility. So sometimes, and most frequently, it's only one spouse that has to go into a facility. And one of the big concerns we have is what happens to that healthy spouse.
Sure.
You know, we want, and oftentimes, unfortunately, it's the breadwinner that's going into the facility. And the wife usually is the one, you know, typically this is what's happening is the husband will go into a facility and he has all the income. He has the higher Social Security. He may have the pension money. And then the wife who may not have worked, may not have such a high income coming in. How is she going to survive? How is she going to pay her mortgage payment and her utility bills and things like that? So there is some allowance that's available for the spouse that stays home. There's an income allowance that we can work through, but so that the healthy spouse at home, who's called the community spouse, can receive some of the income from the spouse that's going into the facility, and the the healthy spouse, the community spouse, also gets to keep a higher amount of assets. So even though the applicant that's going into the facility may be limited to only $2,000 in countable assets, the community spouse, the healthy spouse, can have $130,380 worth of assets. So that helps a lot. So we'll work within those rules and those parameters to get the sick spouse, the one that needs to go into a facility or go on Medicaid, qualified while still preserving as much as we can for the healthy spouse to be able to survive. And sometimes when the person is not married, we would still do what needs to be done to get them qualified for Medicaid, and then try to preserve as much as possible so that the person who's going to be overseeing them and taking care of them has some assets available to make the recipient's life a little nicer, because Medicaid doesn't provide a lot.
No, I know if grandma wanted, if we wanted to get her nails done or her hair cut, and there were certain other expenses that weren't covered, so that, the kids chipped in for those. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're talking about that, because a lot of times that's what we've seen in the past, is that the healthy spouse has gone broke and has nothing to maintain going forward, because they've spent all of the money on trying to take care of the sick person. So it's really beneficial to talk to you about that Medicaid planning.
Yes, and that to me is a travesty when a person waits too long, I think, to come and get help. And they've, in the meantime, spent down all their money or a lot of the money, and now there's very little left over for the healthy spouse that has sometimes many years longer to live, and they need to be able to survive. So the earlier we can get people in, the better. Now, we'll help you in a crisis, and our typical telephone call is a crisis call, unfortunately. It's usually a frantic family member or spouse calling to get help because they just found out that their loved one who had been in the hospital is now going to have to be discharged to either a rehabilitation center or to some kind of long-term care, and they just found out the price tag is $8,000 to $12,000 a month, depending on where you go and how much care you need. And how are they going to pay that? Most people don't save enough money to be able to pay for long-term care. When we save our money through our 401k and our IRAs and our pension, that's usually money just so that you can live, right?
Right.
So you can pay your living expenses, not necessarily for paying long-term care. And typically, if someone goes into a long-term care facility, I guess statistics have said that they stay for approximately 3 years.
Wow.
So kind of calculate that out. $10,000 a month for 3 years. I don't know anyone. Not too many people have that kind of money. Yeah. Yeah. So Medicaid's important, and we don't want you to wait until the last minute, like Jennifer said, because we want to preserve the assets for the healthy spouse. They have to be able to survive.
Yeah, I know my next question to you is going to be who needs to plan for Medicaid, but I almost think we're answering the question even as we're talking, because I guess one of the things that the average person, we understand, or we get bombarded in the mail, here's all your Medicare options, and so everybody's signing up whatever they think the right plan is for them for the next year. And so then, like you said, they wind up with some situation, puts them in the hospital. Then they want to they usually send you to a skilled nursing facility. Then as you work through those process, if it becomes an extended stay, you assume that, well, this is all paid for by Medicare. And you find out, well, number one, that's not exactly true, because there's a pretty big number that kicks in on those next, I think it's the next 90 days after you get into it. But then once you've run through that, as I understand it, you're done. If you need more help, now you are really on your own. And this is where the Medicaid planning is so important, right?
Yes. And we do get a lot of those phone calls when they find out that the rehabilitation isn't going to be enough. They're going to have to stay in a facility long term. And now they're down to just days of Medicare being available to pay for care, and it becomes a real crisis. So the sooner we know that there's a possibility the better. I mean, we can plan and we can get like things set up and not have to pull the trigger on everything until the time comes, but at least have a plan in place. And one of the most important things to have is going to be that durable power of attorney.
Right.
Okay. So what typically happens when the person themselves is in crisis, they're usually too sick to be able to go through the steps that are needed to get the Medicaid planning done for themselves. So who's going to do it for you if you are too sick to do it for yourself? If you're married, your spouse doesn't automatically have that right. So you're going to, even if you're married, you can't just rely on, well, I'm married, my wife can do it or my husband can do it, because that's not necessarily accurate. You really do need to have a durable power of attorney. And word of caution with that is durable power of attorney in Florida, in order for them to be valid for whatever purpose you need it to be for, it has to specifically allow for that. It can't just be the words like, you can do everything I can do in my place, that kind of thing. So if you happen to have an out-of-state durable power of attorney, I suggest you get it updated so it has Florida compliant language. If you have a durable power of attorney that you downloaded off the internet, you need to have an attorney redraft it for you as quickly as possible. If you purchased a form from a paralegal service or non-lawyer service, please get it updated. I cannot tell you how many times we get out-of-state documents downloaded from the internet because they're trying to save a little money, or purchased from a non-lawyer service, and they're inadequate. And if you come to my office or any attorney's office for Medicaid planning and you don't have a power of attorney at all, or if you have a defective power of attorney, you're probably going to have to go through the guardianship process in addition to the Medicaid process in order to get the authority you need to make decisions. And that's regardless if you're married or not.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because particularly in Florida, and I was going to bring our executive director, Rick Broderick, into this conversation because he has spent, I guess, the past number of years originally from working here in Florida and doing things, but then they've been up in Illinois. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, and in Illinois. So I imagine we have so many people who are coming to Florida, and maybe over a course of time, they had documents that they thought would be the right things done by an attorney up where they live, and then they get to Florida and find out maybe I've got to reshift all these things because the rules may be sometimes different. And I guess that's another question. Maybe if you had Medicaid planning and things like that going on, maybe in your home state, if you were Illinois, New York, or someplace like that, it seems like it's wise to sit down with somebody who really understands the Florida law, like yourself, and said, this is where you're good, but this is what we got to adjust.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is a great session for me, having just moved back. Ruth, I'll be making an appointment.
I look forward to that. And I just want you to know, I know with my office, and I can't speak for other attorneys that practice in the area, but I know with my office, we do the consultations for free. So you don't even have to, be committed to anything. You can come in, get the education, and then make your own decisions. We don't pressure people. We know what we're doing is the right thing and that we're helping people. And so we don't have to sell hard. We don't have to pressure people. We just give them the information, and then they make their decision on whether or not they want to move forward. And we will do that for free, just so that you have the education you need.
I was going to ask Jennifer Helin, you probably run into this a lot. I think most of us think that we're not wealthy enough, or we don't have enough to worry about. So we maybe don't do the things that we're supposed to do because we don't perceive ourselves. Even the term estate planning sounds like, well, I have this mansion and all this acreage. you have this idea and say, well, no, I just have a house. That's what I have. And, so I'm just trying to get by. But what you're talking about is even at whatever level you're at, this Medicaid planning sounds really super serious.
It really is, and having those documents in place is very serious. When we come out to do an assessment, every client we ask, do you have a power of attorney? Do you have advance directives? And do you have a do not resuscitate? And we don't do any medical, we don't do anything with those documents, but we see it all the time. And we want to make sure that those people, our clients, have those protections in place and that they're knowledgeable about them. And so if they don't, then we recommend someone like Ruth, because it's really important to have those documents. And I've seen it, again, with my own family members and in my past, of how important those documents are.
Yeah, and kind of in keeping with that, right? Sometimes we go online and we think we can solve this ourselves. We're pretty smart. We can just download the thing. It's what all the TV commercials say, right? And then even on top of that, what I gather is sometimes we try to do our own planning and then we make things worse. Like, oh, I'm just going to give the stuff to the kids anyway, and then that's a gotcha, right?
Yes, absolutely. So when you apply for Medicaid, Medicaid has the right to look back at your finances for a 5-year period. It's called the 5-year look back period. And during that 5-year look back period, they're going to look to see, did you give away assets for little or less than fair market value? And that includes gifting to your children. Now, IRS, and people get confused because they say the IRS says I can gift to my children. But it's a different rule than what applies in Medicaid. That's a tax rule that says you can gift a certain amount each year without having tax consequences. That's not applicable in the Medicaid arena. You cannot gift to your children. There are certain things that we can do as part of the Medicaid planning process, but with giving assets, but you got to be so careful, because the default rule really needs to be, I cannot give anything away.
Yeah. Because
the limitations on what you can do with giving things away are so narrow and will be construed against you. So you have to be really careful what you do. And when it comes to those documents that you download from the internet, a lot of times you don't know that they're defective until it's time to try to use them.
Right.
And they're tested at that point. And then what usually typically is occurring at that point is the person who signed the document, normally we're seeing no longer has capacity. So you're stuck with what you have. And if it's a defective document that can't be used, you're stuck with that. And here's the thing with estate planning. It doesn't have to be expensive, and it's not just for rich people, because when we do estate planning, it's not all about just assets. It's also about taking care of you, your person, your health, and who's going to make decisions for you, and who's going to take you to go get ice cream, and who's going to be caring for you, who's going to go shopping for you. Those are things that we want to make sure is taken care of, and that doesn't mean that you're a rich person. Everybody needs those.
No, so important. The conversation we're having. Listen, we're at our half-show break, but we've got so much more to drill into this topic. So thank you, Ruth Rhodes with Rhodes Law, PA, and Jennifer Helin, Seniors Helping Seniors, and Rick Broderick, our Executive Director, and we'll see you in a few moments.
90.3 FM. You're listening to Helping Seniors of Brevard, heard every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 o'clock with Joe Steckler. Joe is off today. Filling in is Kerry Fink. Hi, Kerry.
Hi, John Harper, and thanks. And during the mid-show break, we have just been like on a roll about this topic that we've opened up about Medicaid planning. And Rick Broderick, who is our executive director, he's moving back to Florida after a very big, successful career. You've been up in Illinois, and now you're here helping us get where we're trying to go on everything helping seniors world. And we were just talking about how important this conversation is.
Yes, thank you, Kerry. It really is. And Ruth, I just can't thank you enough for giving us some really good information. And Jennifer, as always, thank you as well. I think for me, what I'm finding out is those of us that think we have it covered need to relook at stuff. And nothing is as simple as it sounds. Jennifer, even when I heard you talk about the do not resuscitate, there's even, from what I understand, there's even differences within that. It's just not one simple form. It's do not resuscitate after. Maybe you want them to resuscitate, with the pads or whatever, but there's not just a do not, or help me out. Isn't that the case?
Here in Florida, it is a completely different thing than a lot of other states, because every state is different. In Florida, it is a medical piece of paper. It is a correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a goldenrod kind of weird yellowish piece of paper that the doctor needs to sign off on. So if somebody tells me, oh yeah, I have a do not resuscitate from Boston, that's not going to cut it here in Florida. In Florida, it is this very specific paper that is signed by the doctor, and it should be on your refrigerator or someplace that the paramedics know exactly where to look for to grab that paper and then treat you respectively of that piece of paper, whatever is on that and written on your do not resuscitate. So it's if you're coming in from another state, your do not resuscitate is pretty much useless. You've got to get a new one here in Florida.
Okay, and from again, am I right to understand that the way the doctor can write it, it's you may want to have the quick resuscitation, but if you've been out for 2 minutes or something,
I don't think so.
Or is there nothing like that? No, it's either yes or no.
I think that might be included in your advanced directives, but the do not resuscitate is pretty short and sweet, and it is a medical form.
It really is.
Okay.
And I always caution people when they say, I want to do not resuscitate. One of the first things I say is why. Do you have an illness right now that you suspect may kill you? Let's talk about this. Because one of the documents we handle through the estate planning process would be a living will. And a living will is one of those advanced directives that instructs your doctors and medical providers in the future to allow you, if you actually are in the dying process, to die naturally without any artificial things to keep you alive, like don't plug me into any breathing machines, don't give me any forced feedings. That would be a living will. It's a little different than a DNR. In fact, it's a lot different than a DNR, because a DNR is just going to say, do not resuscitate, and it's pretty straightforward.
It's uncommon for me at Seniors Helping Seniors to see a client with a do not resuscitate. The only clients I typically see are hospice patients who are, in the active process, and they do have that medically necessary but a doctor's not going to give me a do not resuscitate. It's not medically necessary.
Right. So
See, this is the kind of information that's so important, because I think there's just a lot of misconceptions out there. People confusing a DNR with a living will. And
Absolutely.
And I think and maybe I'm confusing it too, because I think in Illinois they do kind of combine them a little bit. So it may be that that it could even be, but the point is, that's why we need to come to the experts. That's where Helping Seniors of Brevard really wants to try to get to, where we can provide you the resources, not do it for you, we can't. But we can get you to Jennifer. We can get you to Ruth. We can get you to the people that know the answers. And that's what we are. We are a provider of resources to find the answers for you, but you still have most of the homework to do yourself.
I had it once. I was asking somebody a question, and I said, they said, what's the difference between, I don't know, let's just pick two. What's the difference between a Lowe's and a Home Depot? And we would go, well, they're both stores. I can go get stuff that will help me fix up my home. Now, if we on the radio show had a manager of a Lowe's store and a manager of a Home Depot store, they'd be here telling us for hours, well, this is how we do this. This is different than that. And so part of the problem for us with the aging process is we're not experts. Like those guys who run those stores are experts. They know a lot of stuff that we as a consumer strolling through that front door don't know. You, Ruth Rhodes, as an attorney who specializes in elder law, you know things. So even if we think we know, we may be actually more dangerous to ourselves than if we don't know. And that's the thing I really want to come back on this Medicaid planning, because the question we kind of left out there is who needs to plan for Medicaid planning. And I guess the question is why? Why is what happens if you need help and you are now out of money and you still got all these other dimensions going on. You have your family, you have everything, your spouse, or however all that works for you. And you still got to find ways that you're going to maneuver through it. And if we plan ahead, we're certainly going to be better off than showing up at the last minute. Or worst case, like you were talking about just before the break, somebody comes in with a document, maybe it was homegrown. Now it's got to be tested, and it fails the test. Well, you can't go back and do a redo, can you?
That's correct. Because if you have lost your capacity, and a lot of times that's the crisis situation we're dealing with, where if you lose your capacity, you're no longer legally allowed to sign a document, a legal document. So if you end up in a situation like that where you have defective documents because they don't pass the test, the scrutiny test, then you may end up having to go through a guardianship, which just adds additional layers of cost, for one thing, because a guardianship is extremely expensive. If we can avoid it, we want to try to avoid it. But it also adds a lot of anxiousness and anxiety and stress to the whole situation that's already pretty stressful for all involved. So if we can keep the stress level down, that's good. And always planning, just like everyone knows, it's common sense. If you plan, then usually you have something to fall back on when the crisis comes. Okay, there's a crisis, but you know what? I got this plan, and we're going to stay calm, and we're going to work through this plan. Hand in hand, Medicaid planning goes hand in hand with estate planning, essentially. Estate planning, as we kind of briefly talked about during the break, can start as young as 18. Now, I don't think an 18-year-old needs a full-blown trust package and will and everything like that, but a good durable power of attorney for your 18-year-old, a good healthcare surrogate document for your 18-year-old should cover them in most situations. Like they go off to college, mom and dad can be their named agents in case something happens. As we get older, as we accrue assets, as we have children, as we marry, divorce, remarry, things like that, our life becomes more complicated. More planning needs to be put in place to take care of you, to take care of your spouse, to take care of your children from your current marriage, from your prior marriage. So it becomes more complicated as we get older, but it's nothing that we can't just handle. And then when it comes to the Medicaid planning, when is the time for that? You don't have to do that at 18 or 20 or 40, unless you're got some kind of disability that brings it to the forefront and you got to deal with it as a younger person. But generally, the Medicaid I'm talking about is Medicaid for folks who are 65 and up. And so if you are in that age bracket, 65 and up, you should have at least a discussion on Medicaid and how are you going to take care of yourself long term.
You know, I was thinking as you were describing that, you know, one of the things that we always are running into when we think about all this planning and stuff, you know, I use the analogy when we're kids growing up, they always come to us and say, well, what's your plan for when you grow up? You know, what are you going to be? Are you going to go to a school? What kind of job do you want to have? How are you going to provide for yourself? So they ask us all these questions. Whether we think about them the right way or not, that's a different story. But they're asking the questions. What's your plan? And then, you know, when we get into our working life, they say, well, what's your plan? How are you going to retire? Okay, what is your plan? Are you going to retire in this state? Are you going to do this? Are you going to, are you going to send your kids to college? Do you need to plan for that? They ask us all these questions. So our entire life we're planning. And then when we get to that retirement point, we say, well, I have my retirement plan, but we're always just thinking in terms of like everything going smoothly. Maybe I've got, you know, like we were talking about earlier, you have your 401k, you have these different tools, and you say, well, I'm pretty good. But we failed to plan for those things. And most of us have arrived at a certain point because we've seen it in our own family. Something else went wrong with someone that we are related to in a family, and then we had to jump in, or worse yet, we just saw it end badly. And yet somehow with that, we don't take the time to make that aging plan, which is what Joe Steckler has always talked to us about, is we got to get people to understand that importance. And that's what you're talking about. And you do a lot of seminars and things that are free to the public, right, to help us understand what we should be thinking about like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Myself and my staff, we believe heavily in educating our clients, educating the public. We provide a lot of educational seminars. We do one every single month at One Senior Place on the third Wednesday of the month. We put one on in person, and you can attend by Zoom. Mm-hmm. And we have a different topic every single month. So this month, actually, in March coming up, we've already done the one for February. So the March topic is going to be not leaving your estate planning up for luck, right?
Right.
Because next month is St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
We're
right.
going to be having our seminar just a couple of days before St. Patrick's Day. And I don't know if everyone knows this or not, but if you don't have a plan for you, the state of Florida's got one for you. And it's probably not going to be the one you would like for yourself. So that's what our next topic is going to be next month at One Senior Place.
So I'm going to ask you. In fact, I wanted to remind you, if you haven't, listener, picked up a copy of the February issue of Senior Scene magazine, you can actually read that both at the Helping Seniors website and also on the seniorscenemag.com website if you haven't seen it. But there's a great article in there, actually, Ruth, that you wrote called Estate Planning Pitfalls. Let's check estate planning off your list. And so what you're talking about makes so much sense. If somebody wants to get involved in that seminar that's upcoming, how do they call your office, or how does that work to get involved in that?
We try to make it as easy and convenient as possible. So for those folks who still like to pick up the phone and talk to a live individual, then just call our office. The number is 321-610-4542. And if you're one of the folks who don't want to talk to anyone live and would rather do it all electronically, you can do it on our website. You can sign up at www.rhodeslawpa.com. That's RHODESLAW, P as in Paul, A.com. Just go to the education tab and you can sign up for our next seminar without having to talk to one human being.
But when we're talking with attorney Ruth Rhodes, who is an expert on elder law, and so one more time, that phone number, if they do want to call to the office and maybe even ask a question about something that they're hearing us talking about Medicaid planning today.
Absolutely. The number is 321-610-4542.
So also in the studio with us is Jennifer Helin, who is the owner of Seniors Helping Seniors of Brevard. And people oftentimes get our two organizations intermixed, which is fine because you're a board member just like Ruth is on the Helping Seniors organization. Helping Seniors is now in our 10th year. We are the Florida nonprofit that operates the county's senior information helpline, and we're committed to getting information out and about. That's why you'll see us at senior expos. You'll pick up your Senior Scene magazine. You'll see our articles. You can watch us on Space Coast Government TV daily. You can, like you're doing right now, listening to us on the radio. But that is a nonprofit organization. You, as Seniors Helping Seniors of Brevard, you have a mission to help people do things at home safely, having seniors helping seniors, right?
Yes, we really do hire seniors to go out and help seniors. We do light housekeeping, meal preparation, transportation to doctor's appointments, grocery stores. We'll do the shopping for them, just out socially, get out for a ride, see something new and different. And we really do hire people 50 and over. We've got our average age is usually around in their 60s, but we've got 50 all the way up to 83, and 83 can run circles around me. So he's one of my goals. I want to be him when I grow up. But we really enjoy helping seniors to go out and help seniors. It really is that easy, and we find it really works because it's a compassionate, someone a little closer in age coming in to help. And we do get involved kind of in that day-to-day life with our seniors. And that's why I'm really glad to have Ruth here with us, because we see the need. And I have a quick question. So something you said earlier, Ruth, piqued my interest, because we also see, you mentioned second marriages, third marriages, where someone maybe, is widowed and then they get married later in life. I've never been a big proponent of a prenup. As a younger person, I just think you're going into it with looking at failing. But boy, at a second or third marriage, older folks getting married, I think that's so important because it would solve a lot of problems later on. And we see that where the kids are fighting because who gets mom, who gets dad? It's a second marriage. Where they go, I'm going to move dad to Illinois. Well, I'm taking mom and we're staying here in Florida. And this couple who's now been married for 20 years is split up, and it can get nasty. I can imagine that I would want an elder attorney to help me with that prenup, because you can also do the planning in addition to that Medicaid planning and the state planning in addition to that. Is that something that you would help someone do?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I did want to touch on, not only is it their travesty of breaking up a marriage that didn't want to get broken up because you have children who are fighting and not really looking at the big picture, but only looking at themselves, honestly. But in addition to that, when your widow or your widower remarries, the money that you may have left to them may end up going to their new spouse's children if you don't plan it right. So that's also something that we would want to make sure we're looking at. Are these your children from your original marriage together, or do you have children from prior marriages that we need to make sure we're protecting? And it gets to be complicated, and you do need to think about these things. It's very tragic what can happen if you don't plan accordingly.
Yeah, during the commercial break, you guys were sharing some kind of off the record, I would almost call them horror stories of where somebody didn't get the correct thinking about a situation going forward. They had turned a house over to a kid and went out for some treatment someplace and come back, and the kid had sold the house. And I mean, it's like now the parent is just flat stuck. And I mean, the problem is, my dad used to have an expression, you can't put an old head on young shoulders. And what he meant by that is that you can't expect somebody who's at an early point in life to be able to really process all these dynamics. And even like we've been talking about this whole show, even when we're approaching our retirement years, nobody's ever talked to us about these things that we need to know. And that's why what you're talking about is so important, because we would just think, well, I want to leave this stuff to my kids, so I'm just going to divvy it up, and then the nursing home can take care of me. But now I've really dug myself a hole.
Right. Not only have you possibly disqualified yourself from being able to receive Medicaid benefits, which can be very valuable, $8,000 to $12,000 a year,
a month, right?
Excuse me, a month.
Yeah.
But not only that, but if you give, like, for example, Jennifer is the one that mentioned about the house. The older woman went to go get medical treatment in a different state. She signed her house over to her child because she wasn't sure what would happen during the medical treatments. She ended up coming back home, doesn't have a house to go home to. I would never recommend adding a child to a deed, ever. For one thing, you're risking yourself, you're risking your home, because if your child gets in a lawsuit situation, gets sued, gets a judgment against them,
there goes the house.
They could possibly go after their share of your home, and it just becomes very sticky. And there's other ways of, and she probably did that to avoid probate. I mean, that's typically why people add their children to a deed or just sign their house over. There's other ways to avoid probate that still protect you. And that's where an estate planning attorney can come in. We can help you avoid probate. It's something a lot of people want to do, and I would encourage them to try to avoid probate if you can. But we want to do it the right way, because not only do we want to avoid probate, we want to protect you. We want to make sure, you're not taken advantage of. And I know it sounds horrible, because you probably think, not my child. My child would never do that. But I'm going to tell you, as a litigating attorney, I've had to sue plenty of children.
Wow. And I guess stress, these things don't come up at the best of times either. So everybody's under maximum stress and maybe operating at an emotional level instead of a rational level. And I think that's one of the things that you're speaking to is let's get ahead of all that. It's so simple to get ahead of it. Why don't we? And I guess the first answer is, number one, we want to avoid the topic because it's not fun. Going shopping could be fun. Thinking about this is less fun.
It's not fun.
and so it's something that we would put off until now we can't put it off. So now we've really boxed ourselves in.
Right. But I'll tell you, even though you think the topic's not fun, it's not a topic that a lot of people want to talk about. But I will say that when my clients are done talking to me, they feel so much better.
I was going to say the peace of mind, right?
It's they know they have a plan. That's one thing they don't have to worry about. How are they going to be taken care of? How are they going to take care of their kids? How are they going to take care of their spouse? We've dealt with that. Now you can breathe and you can move on to the next subject.
And I guess, having said that, I'm going to go back to a minute to what Kerry said before about Home Depot and Lowe's. but I'm going to throw ACE in as another one, and only because I have a
Troublemaker.
really good friend at an ACE Hardware. But and the reason is, when you go to an ACE, you get always somebody that knows what they're talking about on the aisle that you need. You go to Home Depot or Lowe's, you don't always. Now, you can't get lumber at ACE. So there's a lot of things that you need from Lowe's and Home Depot that you don't need from ACE. But the individual care, and Ruth, Jennifer, that's what I'm hearing from the two of you. You know, when you need legal assistance, you don't go to any attorney. You know, you go to someone that specializes in estates and wills in Medicare, Medicaid. The same thing with seniors helping seniors. You know, we go there with a specific need, and it's individual to the person. And that's really what the two of you seem to be emphasizing, at least to me, is that this is specific to a need, to a state. And probably in some cases almost to a county, just because, you know, different things are different within a county. So,
I agree. And I got to add one thing to that is the Ace Hardware versus Lowe's versus Home Depot. They're getting all these free plugs. It's awesome. But just this week, I got a telephone call from a potential client who is going to hire me because she had an attorney who does not do this regularly, draft her estate planning documents. She sent me the documents over to review. Not one document was prepared correctly. Not one. And so she's very upset because she paid good money to have estate plan done, and it's no good.
Get the right person for the right job. So we just have enough time. Speaking of that, let's get phone numbers out, because Jennifer, we never did get your phone number out. You could take calls from two kind of people, I think. One, people who might need help at home, but also a quality senior who's looking for good employment, right?
Absolutely. If someone would like a part-time job that they love, give us a call at 321-722-2999. And yeah, if you need a little help at home, give that same number a call, 321-722-2999.
And Ruth, especially with these seminars coming up, we really want to encourage people, take the next step. You got your, I guess you would say, eyes open, but maybe ears open since it's radio. How do we get in touch with your office?
So you can call our office at 321-610-4542. That's 321-610-4542. Or you can go on our website at www.rhodeslawpa.com. That's RHODESLAWPA.com.
Well, thank you, Attorney Ruth Rhodes with Rhodes Law, Jennifer Helin, Seniors Helping Seniors of Brevard, Rick Broderick, our Executive Director, and on behalf of Joe Steckler, Kim Bernard, and the whole Helping Seniors team, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.